A woman like you comes once in a lifetime." Maria closed her eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's it, Peter." Her husband held her hand gently, his heart tightening as he caught one last, fading glimpse of her eyes before they closed forever. The pain in his chest was unbearable. The love of his life was slipping away. "Rest in peace, my love," he finally choked out. Hours passed, but he couldn't bring himself to leave her side. He knew this was the last time he would ever see her. His hands cradled hers, as if warming them might somehow bring her back. And in his mind, memories flooded in. Memories of a love that had lasted a lifetime. Peter and Maria had grown up together. Their parents had built homes right next to each other. They had walked to school side by side. When had their friendship turned into something more? No one could say for sure, but by the time they reached high school, everyone had noticed the way Peter looked at Maria and the way she blushed when she caught him staring. After graduation, he finally found the courage to tell her what he had been feeling all along.
"I want to build a life with you, a home filled with love and the laughter of our children." His words touched her heart in a way nothing else ever had, and without hesitation, she said yes. Back then, college wasn't something most small-town kids considered. They had responsibilities, families to help, jobs waiting for them. So Maria and Peter rolled up their sleeves and got to work. Maria quickly became one of the top farmhands in town. Peter worked long hours as a tractor operator. It was exhausting, endless work. But at home, there was always love. One day, Maria's friends sighed with envy. "You're so lucky, Maria. Peter treats you like a queen. He never yells, never makes you cry. You have a husband most women can only dream of." Maria just smiled, because it was true. There wasn't a single bad thing she could say about the man she had married. The years passed, one after another. Maria and Peter had sons, strong, healthy boys, and no one was more protective of Maria than Peter during her pregnancies. God forbid you lift anything heavy or work too hard out in the fields. If something needed to be done, Peter went himself. He took on extra work, made sure she rested, and when the babies arrived, he was just as devoted to them as he was to her. In the middle of the night, he would wake up and see Maria fast asleep, cradling their newborn in her arms. Carefully, he'd lift the baby and place him in the crib, rocking him back to sleep. Then he'd pull the blanket over Maria and whisper softly, "Shh. Sleep, my love." He'd brush his fingers through her long, wavy hair as it spilled over the pillow, then press a gentle kiss to her forehead. The children grew up. Their parents grew older. But Maria and Peter, they were always together, side by side in the fields, side by side baking bread, side by side at the farmer's market in town. And wherever they went, they were in sync, a team. Peter's 50th birthday was a celebration to remember. Maria's golden milestone was just a month away. But only days before the party, tragedy struck. She had a stroke. Peter moved heaven and earth to save her. Countless hospital trips, endless medical bills. He never left her side. He sat in her hospital room, feeding her spoonfuls of soup, brushing her hair, holding her hand like she was the most fragile thing in the world. He spoke to her for hours, telling her about everything. The town, the kids, the grandkids, the fields they had worked for a lifetime. And even if she couldn't always respond, he just kept talking, laughing at his own jokes, choking up when he mentioned the things that mattered most. His Maria, the love of his life, the woman he was terrified of losing. One day, Maria finally spoke. "It's like magic," the women in her hospital room whispered to each other. "Did she cast a spell on him or something? Our own daughters barely visit, they say that's what nurses are for. But this man, he stays by her side day and night." No one could believe that after all these years their love was still as strong as ever. Against all odds, Maria pulled through. She struggled to walk, her speech was slow, even feeding herself took effort, but she was alive. And Peter, he took on everything. He refused to let her lift a finger, yet deep inside, the guilt ate away at him. He wished he could do more. The doctor had warned him, "If she has another stroke, there may be no saving her next time." and that thought haunted him. The stress took its toll. Peter got sick. Diabetes. And unlike Maria, he didn't have anyone to care for him the way he had cared for her. "Look at them." Barely able to walk but still holding hands, the townswomen whispered as they watched Peter and Maria slowly making their way to church. "The way he looks at her. My husband wasn't this sweet to me even in his 20s, and they're almost 70. And when he stops to talk to someone, he still wraps his arm around her waist. That's real love." That was the last golden autumn the town would see them like this, together. Because as soon as the rains came, Maria's health took a turn for the worse. Neighbors stopped by, expecting to find a house full of visitors, family coming in and out. Instead, they found something else. A home spotless, floors shining, air filled with the smell of warm soup or fresh mashed potatoes. Her kids must be stopping by often. Good for them, they told each other. They had no idea Peter had been doing everything himself. On the morning of October 14th, when the church bells rang, Peter didn't go to service. Because that was the day he had to say goodbye to Maria. For days, she had barely spoken. But now, with the last of her strength, she whispered one word. The word he had dreaded his whole life. "It's time." Peter refused to believe it. He clutched her hand tighter, as if somehow that could keep her with him. But she was already slipping away. And this time, she wasn't coming back. Peter sat beside her until evening. Then, with gentle hands, he bathed her, dressed her in her best clothes, laid her on their bed, and called their sons. He walked behind the casket, his face hollow with grief. The funeral, the service, the wake, everything passed in a blur. He barely remembered any of it. He made it through the 9th day of mourning, but he never reached the 40th. Maria had called him home, and once again the town was full of whispers. He spent his whole life by Maria's side, and even in death he couldn't stay away.